Hey there, my name is Rachel Kalaki.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Shelby, and welcome to the Magdala Podcast.
We know from experience that pornography, masturbation, and other sexual addictions are not just a guy problem.
The need for women to be accompanied in their journey toward healing from addiction has gone sorely unmet, and that's why we're here.
Magdala is a space where women can find hope, healing, and freedom from sexual addiction through support, community, and accountability.
Here on the podcast, you'll find everything from testimonies to practical advice to discussions on how to live fully as a Catholic woman.
You are not alone, and wherever you are on your journey, we welcome you to this table. I'm ready. Ready?
I'm ready. We're here to talk about masturbation. Here we go. All right.
We're needed. That's the intro.
Yeah, I mean, I think by way of an intro, I think you and I both had the same reaction when Shelby texted in the Slack, hey, when are you guys recording the masturbation episode? And it's one of those moments where you kind of pause and you think about, yeah, this is the job, isn't it? Great.
I had one of those moments of, I forget what I do for work.
I know.
Specifically right now I'm in a season, I work with a lot of high schoolers.
Yeah.
So I share that my job is working with women who struggle with sexual addiction. I will share that. But that's the phrasing that I use, and I don't share any more specific language with them except
Yeah.
in the right context. You know what I mean? So I just am used to sort of, I guess, wavering around those things. And then, just the language of it too. Recording. Yep. That's what we're recording.
That's what we're recording. Yeah. The other night when I was at a fundraiser, somebody asked a question about like how do women interact with pornography differently, or how does their consumption look different? And I started going off on like a study about women's arousal templates and all this stuff. And I realized like all of a sudden this whole room of like people was looking at me and I was like, yeah, I guess we're just not used to these terms just being thrown out in conversation. It's okay. Anywho, but we're used to it. And that's why we're going to talk about why masturbation is wrong today. There we go. Introduction done.
We're talking about masturbation.
Yeah, so we need to figure out how to filter this on YouTube. So, why are we talking about this? I think it's important to touch on.
You're doing so good. This is our job.
It's a Monday. So, at different points, I know I've gotten a lot of conversation about this. I think you have too. Well, first, women in Magdala have reported masturbation as the highest, or I'll say most common behavior, sexually compulsive behavior that they struggle with. I think at one point it was something as much as like 90% of our women struggled with masturbation or noted that they did, and 70% said pornography. So there's a lot of women experiencing compulsive masturbation in isolation from other things. So that's part of why we're talking about it, is it comes up a lot within our organization, but also I think it's the one that women have the most kind of moral questioning or moral qualms about. I know I've found that in conversation, and I'm sure you have as well. It doesn't help. We had, we were going to talk about how we often discover masturbation as children before we even have language for what it is, let alone why it's wrong, right? So a lot of people are bringing this into their stories from when they're small children, and it can be really heavy to discover, at least within the Catholic Church, that masturbation is seen as a mortal sin, especially when we're several years deep into compulsively doing it. And obviously, us talking about mortal sin, this is not a podcast about addiction and its effects on moral culpability. So take that with what you will. Anywho, but yeah. So I think it can be harder to keep in mind why masturbation is wrong as opposed to pornography. But yeah, I think we're here to talk about that today. Why it's just as harmful. So here we go.
I'm thinking of so many women in our community that's just always the common story. Yeah. I was curious, I'm exploring, I'm young, I don't know my body. And then next thing you know, again, it's compulsive, it becomes a habit and you don't know what to do with it. Right as you were talking, I went to go look at our most recent numbers of our pre-group survey. It's up to 94% of women say that masturbation is a part of their experience, and 79% say pornography.
Yep.
So it's still the inertia. So it continues to come in, whether or not it's a part of pornography, masturbation has been its own sort of habit
Hmm.
category. Yeah, so just glad that we're finally talking about it, this by itself, because I think it can be easier morally to look at some things like pornography, again, just because of
Hmm.
all sorts of scandals in relation to pornography, of seeing why that's wrong. Masturbation on the surface, I think, can be a little harder to see why.
And I want to say a little more shame ridden in a weird sort of
Sure.
way. Like I think people are actually more uncomfortable with talking about masturbation exclusively, rather than talking about pornography. I think because pornography has become a more socially and politically charged topic. Um, but obviously masturbation is a much more private, much more personal act. Um, without these like very obvious wide-reaching effects. And often obviously the two go together, but like you're pointing out with the numbers, there is a disparity. There is like um it's very possible to become compulsively addicted to masturbation alone without the image stimulus. Now, I'm a rare case where it was not a huge part of my story and not a huge part of my porn consumption because my porn consumption was largely dissociative. So I'm a more rare story. I know that, but most of our women, I would say, compulsively struggle with masturbation. And at least I'm thinking of the women in the small groups that I've had. Oftentimes, it's the last behavior to go, sort of. Um, like we can have women who are sober from porn consumption for even several years, but still very much actively struggling with masturbation. I think in many ways a harder behavior for them to let go of.
Mhm. I think even culturally, like I'm trying to think back to some of my college years where masturbation was sort of the main culprit, I guess, in my journey of sexual woundedness. But just as you said, like culturally, it can sometimes be the hardest to talk about, and yet culturally, it seems the like most accepted of all the realms of sexual brokenness that you can engage in. I don't know if I've shared this story on a podcast, but I do. I have a very glaring memory in college of when my roommate's boyfriend broke up with her, and I was really trying to encourage her. It's like, you know what'll get back at him, girl. You light a candle in your room. You turn off the lights, and
Mm,
you do what he couldn't do. You know, the language of Love Myself by Haley Steinfeld is not a positive self love song, but it is about what we're talking about today. Just to quote the philosopher Haley Steinfeld, she said, "When I get chills at night, I feel it deep inside without you, keeping that tempo right. All of this without you, right?" And
yeah,
there's this uh, cultural idolizing, maybe not the right word, romanticizing
yeah,
of this is almost the next step of the self-love culture of the beautiful
100%.
feminist era of feminine empowerment, of not only feminine empowerment sexually, you can go do what you want, but now it becomes you don't even need somebody else to do it for you. You can do it
Exactly.
yourself. And so there's
Hmm.
this beautiful culturally romanticized version of what this is, also just making it much more acceptable in that lens.
Yeah, 100%. And it's very, very well represented in media. Like you're talking about music, TV shows. I can think of multiple TV shows right now that are marketed to adolescents, especially that portray it pretty prominently.
Yes.
And like you're talking about, it's like seen as kind of just a rite of passage of like you discover this. It's a tool in your toolkit. Makes you happy. It's if nothing else, it's a relief of stress. And I guess I want to talk a bit about that. That there's multiple reasons why. I mean, as with any sexually compulsive behavior, there's so many reasons why people engage in it. But masturbation, I feel like has, I'll say, like the widest kind of template of like reasons why. Like I hear personally, it definitely can be like desire based, lust based, but it can also be stress based, loneliness based. Like there's so many different emotional and psychological reasons why people engage in it. And I think that is important to recognize too. Is that oftentimes, I mean, I'm thinking even of like several small group members who've shared like that's how they learned to sleep as children when they couldn't go to sleep. It would help put them to sleep. And when it's something as simple as that, it's tempting to believe that it's innocent. Like, well, this is just something that helps me go to sleep. And so I want to get into uh, why it can't be as simple as that, and why it's also not as innocent as that. But anything else you want to say before we move on to kind of more ethics?
Yeah,
Or
I mean, just to second that of we've shared before, but the two of us have just been able to receive so many women's stories through this ministry
yeah,
specifically, and I've heard that as a reason. The sleep reason.
hmm
I've heard even of women's stories having to do with like autoimmune disease,
oh
illness,
sure,
things
yeah,
that they haven't been able to treat, couldn't find a way out of. But one of the things that provides bodily relief from their body constantly being in pain is masturbation. I've heard that as
mm,
a thing. And even just, I've heard, we'll get into this too, but I've heard of multiple women who have gone to, Christian therapists who tell them that this is an okay and healthy practice, and have even
absolutely.
given this as the way to work through some of their hard things. So
Mhm.
then it's even harder when you have someone in authority telling you that this is okay, and actually this is the mode that you've been using. Like, I know of one woman that was told by a therapist that, like, this was if it was helping her feel relief from like issues she was having with her mom, then to continue engaging in it. The
Yeah.
Christian argument being it was bearing good fruit, quote unquote.
Oh my
If
gosh,
she continue doing it. So
great.
there's just a lot of layers and a lot of reasons to this one. So just seconding what you said, that it can come from a variety of places and from a variety of desires, motivations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gosh, I had a thought about that. The good fruit. I guess that good fruit can look shiny on the outside, still be not good underneath. Anywho, um,
Yeah.
I wanted to briefly also talk about um another reason why I think at least women in our community are engaging in masturbation is actually our married women who are not experiencing orgasm in married sex.
Yeah.
And I do think that's really
Yeah.
important to touch on that. Kind of just throughout this discussion too, is that it's pretty lauded as like something like just a power within, your hands if you're a single person of like this is again a tool in your toolkit. But um I think a lot of married women uh are addicted to it, or at least in a very compulsive sort of use relationship with it because yeah, because married sex is not satisfying for them, and there's so many reasons why that can happen, but I think that's important to hold in this conversation as well. So just wanted to say that too.
Right.
um and I guess here, yeah, here's kind of the ethical side of it. We're going to talk a little bit about the ethical side of why Catholic sexual ethics says that masturbation is wrong, and then I know Annie, you also wanted to kind of refute some of the sort of scientific health side of it, or the advocacy for it, basically. So we'll start with kind of the Catholic sexual ethics side, but um, the problem with masturbation, and this is also important to note now that I'm stepping into this. There is a lot of confusion in different Christian denominations about whether or not masturbation is okay. So I think there's for our non-Catholic listeners, we're going to depend on Catholic sexual ethics. Number one, because both Annie and I are Catholic, and Magdala is a Catholic organization. But also, I do think this is important, just kind of because we find it to be consistent with just Christian sexual ethics across the board. I think
Yeah.
the fact that some denominations or um, Protestant theologians or whatever are kind of vague on this or ambiguous on this, some come down on it um, pretty intensely, and then others don't seem to really care or kind of ambiguous or like it's all about the context or whatever. I don't find those perspectives to be consistent with Christian sexual ethics. So we're positing the Catholic lens, which I think is the best one. Otherwise, I wouldn't be Catholic. Anyway, long explanation. But the ethical problem within the Catholic view with masturbation is that it's because it's directly aimed at orgasm, and orgasm is supposed to be a very powerful and very beautiful good enjoyed in the context of married sex or a marital sexual relationship. Um, and there is kind of a scientific reason behind this, but orgasms release many hormones, but the primary one being oxytocin. And oxytocin is called the love hormone or the bonding hormone. And there's a really natural design to this. Like orgasms are meant to bond a married couple. When you experience orgasm together in within a sexual relationship with a spouse, it inherently is supposed to be bonding. It's supposed to be unitive, and it's supposed to just increase love in a sense. Um, but masturbation kind of isolates this, or not kind of. It definitely isolates this. And then what's meant to be unitive and bonding with another person and rely upon an experience with another person, you only rely upon yourself, and you essentially bond with yourself or with images that are used as the stimulus, whether that's pornography, fantasy, whatever. So whatever reason we're pursuing it for, whether like what we're talking about, like this, the multiple complex and understandable reasons of stress, loneliness, pain, all of these reasons why masturbation kind of comes to the fore. Whatever reason we're pursuing it for, it takes a pretty powerful tool outside of its natural context and therefore renders it powerful for the wrong reasons. So I think one of the biggest arguments that we come up against is that masturbation doesn't really hurt anyone. And if it hurts anyone, it only hurts me. So, like, why do you care? Or why does the church care what I do? The church cares about what we do because it wants all of your actions to be good for you, not just for other people and for society. But it's also worth examining. It actually does harm other people. It can harm a marriage that we might currently be in because of our inability to really bond with a spouse because of that kind of competitive bonding with ourselves. But it can also harm our ability to be really present in a married sexual relationship one day if we are not currently in one. So that's kind of the sexual ethics side of this. Any thoughts, Annie?
Yeah, I think sometimes language that I will use in simplistic terms, like another name for masturbation that has been used, right, is just self pleasuring.
Yep.
Self pleasure. Just that name in general is saying something, you know. So like
Right.
listen to that for a second. You are inherently doing something that is selfish, even if that is not the conscious thought that's going through your mind. You are inherently doing an act
Right.
that is selfish. And when we know, if we know anything about like Christian sexual ethics, it's this language of being self gift, that
Right.
everything about the sexual act is meant to be complete gift of self, total, free, faithful, fruitful, something meant towards the other, always oriented towards the other. And so once
Yep.
that this is turning inward, that should have your alarm go blaring. Something's not right here. In order to be consistent with
Right.
sexual ethics that has sort of been drawn up for us in the past and now.
Yeah, and I think also like the consistency about this within language is really beautiful about Catholicism is that the language of gift, and I think even within a married relationship, like orgasm is supposed to be caused by and reliant upon the other person. It's never meant to be done by you to yourself, even in the context of the other person. That's why um there's like a term called mutual masturbation, and that can become problematic even within a married sexual relationship. Being married does not make it okay. So I think that's important too, is that this actually is quite consistent with married sexual ethics, that there are things that are off limits within a married sexual relationship. Um, and because the church truly views our sexuality as entirely ordered towards unity with another person and posits that that's actually the best way to enjoy sexual pleasure, which I think is true. But
The Magdala podcast is sponsored by the Catholic Theology Show, presented by Ave Maria University. The Catholic Theology Show covers themes such as the value of a Catholic higher education, religious liberty, how to pray, the philosophies of St. Thomas Aquinas, and more. Stream episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and learn more by visiting the link below.
did you want to take it away on the science is healthy, or science says science is healthy? Science says
Science is
no,
healthy.
science says it's healthy.
That's great. Well, so I was a health major in college. I was a nutrition major. So we're all about healthy things. But if you look up like if you were to do a simple Google, is masturbation wrong? Google AI is going to tell you no, it's perfectly healthy for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Love Google.
No, a lot of these arguments doesn't want to talk about like moral, is it good or bad? They'll use the language healthy because then if they say healthy, You just equivalate that to
Yeah.
it must be good.
Yeah.
Um, and I have many thoughts to this. I mean, my first thought that comes to mind, like, is that why you are doing it? Like, is this your health goal that you are doing?
Yeah.
For Lent this year, I want to be more healthy, so I'm gonna start eating more broccoli. I'm gonna go to the gym more, and I'm gonna masturbate more.
What?
No, no. So again, pause for a second. So
Right.
this is all just like meant to be let's just look at what language we're using. Like, is this healthy? And so within that language, oftentimes the language I see is like, okay, but like the release is almost a need, that it's healthy to release this, not to keep this in. Like, I need this. And it's like, okay, sex drive, compulsion, all of this is really real and very difficult. We we work in this for a reason, to
Yep.
recognize that we have more than enough sympathy for this ache, for this sex drive. And as much as it is deep and powerful, it's not the same as a physiological need, right?
Right.
Someone can go without water for, I don't know, maybe 2 days, whatever the science is. Someone can maybe go without food for like a week. Someone can go a lifetime without orgasming.
Right.
There is no need for that in order to live a healthy life. Realistically, if you go to the doctor and they're asking you for indicators of health, they're not, yes, they will ask about your sex life, mostly to make sure you're having protected, safe sex. They are not asking you if you're orgasming. And if
Right.
you are not, that they would then diagnose you with a problem and prescribe you to do that more. That's not an indicator of health.
Right.
Then you can be like, okay, but all these studies will show like positive impacts of masturbation. I told Rachel this. I was looking earlier at some of them, and a lot of them will say something along the lines of, those who masturbate tend to have more orgasms and will have more positive feelings. And I go, yeah, because that is what happens when,
Right.
yep,
That is so
when
quantifiably you have more.
there.
Right. Yep.
Um, it's very hard to find more, I guess, longer term things sort of looking at this. But something that I would generally argue is that I masturbation just cannot be good for one's mental health. Again, asking the question of why you are going to this. Speaking to the married women, as you were explaining in some of the anecdotes, I was reading a story earlier from a woman in our community who was basically sharing she feels so distanced in her marriage, and that's why she
Yeah.
picked up masturbation in the past few months. Notice the why she's masturbating is because of another problem that needs to be addressed.
And it won't and
Um,
will not be solved by masturbation. Masturbation will deepen
and
the problem. Yeah.
masturbation is not the answer to that problem.
Right.
Ask any single woman who is masturbating. The reason why she is doing that, it isn't the thing that is actually relieving her stress, though it might
Mhm.
momentarily. Um, Especially if we're talking about something that is now compulsive. That is not the thing that is healing. That's not the band aid. That's not the pill
Right.
that is actually fixing this. I mean, masturbation, just for anybody who has experienced this, the majority of listeners, I would guess, will result in loneliness. A lot of even scientific sources will even start concluding that masturbation for a lot of people results in guilt. And then they'll try to like shift it to be like, oh, that's because you were raised in a religious context. So that's why. As
Yeah.
opposed to like, we do have a moral conscience that's telling us, okay, something about this though doesn't feel good even
Mhm.
after this momentary release. There's like something that I'm missing. I was listening to one of those it's like BuzzFeed or Jubilee that will do like asking teens questions, and they're all like
Mm.
hidden so you don't know who the teens are. And it was like 16-year-old boys, and one of the questions had to do with like masturbating. And these 16-year-old boys, again, none of them religious, just secular context, are sharing about their experience, saying how they're addicted, they don't know how to get out of it, saying how
Mhm.
they're not happy with it, saying how they're already having problems essentially with their body because of how much
Right.
they engage in it. They're starting to look up more aggressive content. They don't even need content anymore, and it's still not satisfying. This
Yeah.
is this is like a 16-year-old boy just grappling to recognize that there's something not quite right about it. And
Yeah.
my new thing, my new guilty pleasure, when I start talking about these issues, Rachel, you'll enjoy this. My new argument. This is my argument for everything. And there's like more context here, but my new argument for everything It's like happy people just don't do this. If have you watched Legally
Yeah,
Blonde?
happy people just don't shoot their husbands. Yeah.
Yeah, happy people don't kill their husbands.
They just don't. Yeah.
Like to be frank, like happy people, what I share with high schoolers a lot. Like to be frank, happy people don't vape. If your friends are vaping, like there's something else going on. And
Right.
so to be frank, like happy people don't masturbate. Like if this is something going on, like
Right.
really try to find me somebody who is genuinely content in every area of their life and frequently does this thing. There's something else going on. It's not for health. So we can't just claim it off as healthy because there's too many other like side effects
Hmm.
or uneasiness or unhappiness that we do have to address.
Yeah. And also just the fact that it's not healthy to be compulsively using anything.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to be compulsive. Like you need to compulsively use sugar or you need to, yeah, compulsively eat in general, or you need to compulsively even working out. Like that's seen as a broadly healthy thing, but you can become kind of compulsively usury of it, right? So it's not healthy for the mind to have any sort of relationship, like compulsive relationship with anything. So I'd examine that of if you have a compulsive or addictive relationship to masturbation, it's just not healthy to be compulsive with anything. Um, Gosh, you made so many good points, and you're just so funny. I'm just laughing that happy people don't masturbate. They just don't. No, anyway, that's top
What's
line
the
of this
whole quote
episode.
from Legally Blonde? It's like,
She
oh,
goes,
exercise
exercise
keeps
gives you
people in person.
endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people just don't shoot their husbands. They just don't. Um, but I think you're talking about satisfaction too, and I think that's key is that like it is inherently unsatisfying to be bonded to yourself. To be only bonded to yourself. Like that's not what we're made for, and our physiology lends itself to that. Because another context in which oxytocin is released is breastfeeding, and it's used to bond mother to baby, right? So there's a bond there that's meant to be forged with this particular hormone. So our body knows that like we're meant to be bonding with something when we're experiencing orgasm. We're meant to be bonding with someone, and particularly one person, right? I guess I just want to speak to our married women too, and we'll kind of start going with like, yeah, what does this mean for your particular story? I want to address the married women. Um, yeah, if masturbation has come into your marriage as a way to experience satisfaction, number one, I'm very sorry. Number two, um, it is, yeah, it's really, really important to stop, as with any context, but also to make sure that you don't at the same time criminalize your need for pleasure within your marriage. Like you are meant to be having that within your sexual relationship with your spouse. And I'd really encourage you to address the underlying reasons why that's not happening. Perhaps it's a lack of emotional connection, deeper resentment, bigger issues. Um, but maybe it's just a basic lack of knowledge of physiology and or a lack of discussion between you and your spouse. Whatever the case, I would just, yeah, in the midst of trying to recover and heal, don't criminalize your desire for this, and um don't throw away your need for this. It is important to make this happen within the context of your marriage. And yeah, I'd say go about whatever means you have available to you to make that happen, or that's discussing emotional issues or again deeper problems within therapy, or um yeah, getting the tools that you need to have discussions with your spouse about how you experience pleasure and your specific physiology and all this. I think yeah, we do a horrible job at educating men on women's bodies in the proper context. So that's a problem for a lot of couples walking into marriage. But all that to say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is what I'm saying. And I think that goes for single women too. Don't criminalize your desire. Obviously, we're big on that within Magdala, but yeah, I think Annie, what's coming to mind for you for women, where masturbation is a huge part of their story with all of this information?
I'm just starting to remember um maybe it was a season in high school where I was just masturbating much more frequently and again the more that I would do it, the more it wouldn't quote hit like it used to. So then the more I would have to do it. And then after you do it for longer, then you feel even worse because you're like, "Oh, I wasted all this time." Not even in the guilty moral sense. It's like, I wasted all this time. I still don't feel better. I'm
Yeah.
farther behind on the things I had to do. So just even as we're having this conversation, I'm my heart is softening again in a new way for
Hmm.
the women who are definitely in the midst of this, and are definitely experiencing so much overwhelm and stress, and so
Hmm.
we talk about this all the time in the context of our ministry, but being able to ask the deeper question. Masturbation is not going to heal the ache, the thing
Right.
that's really going on inside. So what
Right.
is that? How can you work towards that? A lot of times, again, masturbation is linked to this. We talk about relieving stress, so
Yeah.
odds are there's stress and overwhelmed stuff going on in your life.
Hmm.
What is actually going to help um with that?
Hmm.
You're having sleep problems. There are probably other things related to that that you can address. Oftentimes, another like similar story I've heard, right, is women who've experienced a breakup or who have been sexually active in the past, and now that that's ended, now they've picked up quote a new habit by like entering into
Yeah.
masturbation. So again, there's a loneliness piece that's going on. Whatever the thing is, and usually it's a combination of multiple things, being able to identify that with the Lord and work to find the answer to that problem, because masturbation is just not the answer. And so being able to ask those good questions in prayer, with trusted people, accountability partner, spiritual director, therapy, whatever context is most accessible and best for you in this season, but being able to ask those deeper questions of the
Hmm.
why, and almost also looking at like where this started, because especially if it started when you were really little, there's a lot of
Hmm.
layers to this. We talk about our, like our sexual story. Like if you've never been able to read your own sexual story, not with condemnation but with care and gentleness, have you been
Yeah.
able to look at the origins of this? Where did this come from, and how is that still impacting your decision to do it now?
Yeah, and within that sexual story, examining how you were taught about it. I think that's really important.
Yes.
I know the seasons of my story where masturbation was a part of it. It was very loaded because of the way in which I discovered it was wrong, and the way in which I was educated about it. And I think this happens often, where we're educated about sexual sin from people, or in such a way where it's not recognized that perhaps we're already engaging in it without full knowledge, right? And that's very hurtful and very hard to hear. So I think looking back on your own story and examining what was I taught about myself and what was I taught about my body in the way that I was educated on these things, and did the people educating me give me the compassion I deserved, for what I was experiencing? Because again, like I think we've had women in groups where they're as young as 4 or 5 when they've discovered masturbation, and that's incredibly common. So yeah, I think recognizing that you're a child, and didn't have full knowledge is super important. And then, yeah, what conditions were you under when you did have full knowledge? Um, and I know this like can lead to some really negative experiences in the confessional when women confess this. There's a lot here, but yeah, giving yourself some compassion on how your journey went with this is very, very important. And like you said, Annie, like you exist for more than coping. You deserve more than coping. Um,
Yeah.
you deserve a life of thriving. And thriving comes with difficulty. It comes with facing challenges. It comes with discipline. But yeah, you deserve more than coping. And masturbation, like you pointed out, Annie, I've never really heard about it as a like healthy, thriving part of your day. I've heard of it almost always exclusively as a coping mechanism, and you deserve more than that. So I'd say that too of what are you coping with and how can you instead try to thrive. So that's what
Mhm.
I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I would even say, sort of as we come near the end, specifically if this is one of these convictions that is still iffy for you, if it's still hard to really get behind what we're saying, like with gentleness, I would start with this question for you of how much is this really benefiting you?
Yeah.
And before you go to like, but I've had a hard day and like this, but it really does help. You know what I mean? In some sense, it reminds me of some of the excuses that people will use when talking about like social media usage. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, but it's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with being on it for an hour. Oh, okay. And I'm not getting into moral arguments about phones, social media, none of that. But just leaving with this question of like, how much is this actually benefiting you? Like,
Yeah.
if you really were to sit down and do a pros cons list, can you really convince me, convince yourself, convince the Lord
Yep.
that this is the thing that is making your life better?
Yep.
Because I guarantee it won't be that, but I understand that this is an issue that can be much harder to grapple with. So I just want to leave with that question. If you're leaving this
Mhm.
episode and you're sort of like still sort of annoyed by this, keep asking questions, but really start with that one. Like, is this benefiting you?
Yep.
How is it benefiting you? What would benefit you more? And start discerning ways that you can get out of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It is coming at what cost?
Mm.
Great. I think that that concludes our episode
The
of masturbation.
masturbation episode.
It is done. It is done, folks. And oh wait, sorry. No, it's not done. I had one final thought. As with any sexual compulsion that we address within Magdala, don't white knuckle this one. Like I think
Yeah.
as you're examining these things, as you're thinking about your sexual story, how masturbation has played a role, if you do have an addiction or compulsion towards it, I think as always, white knuckling's not going to fix it. What is going to quote unquote fix it is yeah, paying attention to your whole self in the midst of the recovery process. What are your triggers? What are your needs? What are your authentic longings and desires? Are those going unmet when they could be met, or are you in a state in life where you cannot meet these things right now and living with the loneliness and the pain of that? So, this discussion is not meant to make you white knuckle your recovery journey. It's meant to just shed some moral and psychological light on why the church says what it does. But as always, be gentle with yourself in this process. Be thorough with yourself, but be gentle with yourself as always. All right. And I think that concludes the masturbation episode. There we go.
Amen.
Thanks for listening, folks, and we will catch you soon.
Thanks for listening. Check out more podcast episodes, blog posts, and how to get involved with Magdala by visiting our website, magdalaministries.org. Your love is meant to change the world. We hope to see you soon.